Good afternoon.
Hi, welcome.
Bonjour.
So, welcome. It's sunny afternoon here in Thunder Bay. We'd like to just acknowledge where we are today on the Anishinaabe territory of Nemki-Waju, Fort William First Nation, and home to many Indigenous people, including the Métis people and several other people from nations across Turtle Island. So, glad to be here.
Yes, and it's warm here, so I hope it's warm where you are. Looks like spring's on its way. So today we just want to talk a little bit, we'll recap Module 3, and I know many of you are already working in Module 4, so we'll talk a little bit about some of the observations and things we've seen in there. So Denise, you want to talk about?
Yeah, we were going to talk a little bit about 3.1, which was creating a vision. For those of you who, I think I've sent feedback to most of my course on theirs already, and Christy's working on hers. And quite enjoyed this module. I found that all of the presentations, we had some that were in audio video, some that were PowerPoint, some that were more in a narrative way. But either way, regardless, I think one of the main thing I heard from everybody was the importance of building relationships, building trusting learning environments, ensuring that we had equity, inclusive and diversity within our school environments. And the fact that it was the first day of school or the first couple days of school, whether you're a new principal to the school, it might look different than if you're returning to a school that you've been at for more than a year. And I was thinking back to some of my own experience and one of the postings where they spoke about how you walk into a new school. And I was thinking of Christy, who did work at one school, then went to another school, was at another school, and has achieved success from school to school, but every school is different. So what works at one school might not work at your next school, and in fact, it may require a whole different set of things that matter, a whole different set of how you navigate that, because the data is different, the needs are different, the community is different.
Even the teaching community can be really different. Yeah, dependent on my schools, I've had two very different teaching communities in terms of where, how long they've been in teaching, where they've taught at, even, their sort of where they've come from. And so that makes a real difference in how they approach the work as well.
And one of the other, I'm going to just do a little shout out to Kyle Steele here. Kyle used a screencast of his PowerPoint. What I quite liked about it is he did it, the first presentation, the way that he would do it if he were the one actually leading it. But then the second piece was he actually talked about what he was thinking as he went through his presentation, which led to something bigger that I noticed is the purpose that we take in spending time on things. So I'm going to say like money, which will be our next conversation, but like money, where we put our time is where we indicate to people what matters. And every slide matters, everything you do matters, every activity matters. And so really being thoughtful, I've always tried to put those operational pieces later in the meeting, or if I don't even need to have them in the meeting. Often I would send a link out with a little video that you had to complete, several different must-dos, and then they would sign off on a form that said they did it, and that was that. I didn't have to take time in a valuable time when you actually have time to have staff come together to do operational items. So really use that time in a valuable way, and I find that almost, I would say everybody did do that, and found really unique and meaningful ways, from baking cakes to doing equity walks to doing big large-scale things in the gymnasium, and digging into data. So all of those things I thought were really well done, so congratulations on that.
Yeah. So moving right into Module 3.3, assessments and metrics. I just wanted to make a few comments on that. There were really great discussions about growing success and the opportunities to recognize UDL, Universal Design for Learning, through growing success or through assessment. Lots of good talk about differentiating assessment and meeting learners' needs and how that drives learning and instruction. Something I just wanted to add to think about, and it came up a little bit. Actually, there was a really good story. I would have to give a shout. I'm not sure who it was who shared it, but a really good story about a family whose youngest son is in high school, and they're choosing courses now, and the son would like to pursue a professional pathway to take over the family business, and the family is pretty insistent that no, that they wish him to pursue a pathway in high school that sets him up for university. What's interesting about that, sometimes that's often flipped, and I think the question I try to ask myself when I'm thinking about metrics of success and how I operationalize education in a way that makes it relevant for everybody is whose definition of success am I working from? And some communities and cultures, the definition of success as a person is quite different than maybe going to university. Maybe that's not the priority. Maybe it's just being a whole, healthy, and happy person. And so if we're not meeting their needs in terms of helping them recognize what they call success, then that's when education becomes irrelevant to them. And so you really have to know your community. And Denise kind of gave a nod about moving into a new school. And you need to know your community of teachers, but you also need to know the community you're moving into, because the practices that you do in one school may be completely moot, and absolutely it would be a mistake to actually follow through with those in the next school. So that's really critically important. But always asking yourself, when we talk about being successful in school, are we talking about what we view as success in terms of life and education, or are we talking about what our community values? And I think that's really important, because then you start to think about, well, how then do we make education and assessment within the school relevant to all of our community members in a way that they value? And then maybe we get at the heart of what Suli Breaks was talking about in his spoken word.
I was just reading a little poster. One of the people wasn't super fan of it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But ask some good questions about, does this mean we aren't as educated as someone else who doesn't work for someone? Insinuates that life would be less stressful without school. Pretty sure that, this is the quote, pretty sure that school or no school, life is stressful. And so I would agree with that, actually. Yes. And so I always would, I have the privilege of enjoying my job, and I've actually, for most of my working life, I've always had that opportunity to enjoy the work I do. And when I talk with students, or I talk with my own children, I talk about education, whatever the education is. And like this young person who would like to go into his family business, if you can make a living at doing something you love and enjoy, then to me that's my definition of success. So I think it's not always everybody's, but it's certainly mine. So I don't always love school either. However, I try to make it useful for people and useful for myself.
So the last piece, just moving into Module 4, and we start talking about education, finance, and accountability, really. The 4.2 is about data analysis, and those are still coming in from people. Please don't worry if you're not done yet. But education finance is something I really enjoy. I think most people don't love it, and I think we tend to see budget and money as a barrier to what we want to do. And it can be, for sure, and especially in the times where we are living in right now, where we've seen a 2% decrease in our general budgets. So we're doing more with less, it always seems like. But if we keep at the focus, and that's really what the post, I think folks really took that to heart. If we keep focused on student, dollars need to be attached to student achievement. And then if we ask ourselves in terms of a school leadership perspective, the dollars that I'm spending, is it going towards student success? Is it going towards student achievement? Is it going towards supporting students? Is it tied somehow to that? Or is it not tightly tied, and is that something that I maybe need to relook at and figure out how to use more appropriately? So it's critically important. It is the way in which we make the world go round, so to speak. And when we need resources and we need to support teachers through professional development, or we need to be able to bring in, whether it's external curricula or guest speakers, those are the pieces, and it's the money that allows us to do that. And there's a huge inequity piece right now in terms of money and fundraising. The school that I'm in right now, we fundraise on easily $20,000 to $25,000 a year. The school that I was in previously, if we raised $3,500 a year, we were doing really well. So then that starts to speak to, how that money's used and what opportunities you can provide in schools based on it. And so that again then is you start looking at your funded budget, and then how do you use that more appropriately to provide the opportunities they might not have through the fund-raised budget. So there's a lot of complexity to it, but how we use the money and how we spend it is really critical to student success and achievement. And if we're not doing that well, then we're going to suffer.
I was had opportunity to work in adult and continuing education, and our teachers who we hired were based on the number of students we had, because that directly tied to budget. So different than when I was in a K-8 school or even a 9 to 12 school. If we didn't have students taking courses because they weren't wanting to come and take courses with those teachers, or they weren't engaged, or we weren't advertising in an effective way, we just couldn't run the course, which means we didn't actually have a teacher. So teachers were running on 8-week contracts, depending if we had enough students signed up and continuing. So we had a maybe more so, and I'm thinking back to a post I read earlier, but I think more so than in the general school, we had a definite vested interest in ensuring that students were engaged in learning and kept coming, because when they kept coming, we kept getting paid,
jobs.
and we kept teachers working. So that was really a mantra about engage, engage, engage. So well, it's not always that cut and dry, but certainly in our continuing education program it was. So on that note, we are going to be setting up a Zoom session, so we'll put the link in for you. That'll be, we'll try to give you 2 weeks notice on that. It'll happen before March break though, for those of you who are getting a March break. And we'll get a chance to do some talking, and see you then.
Take care of yourselves, especially now in this time of unrest, and we hope you're all well. We look forward to seeing you in the Zoom session. Thank you.